Okay, I'll just go ahead and say it. I can't stand the art community. And I've been an artist for probably 2 to 3 years now or whatever. And one of the things I would always do is observe how the art community will interact with one another, whether it's being through social media, going through art events, or just seeing videos. I mean, you name it, the list goes on, or just even talking to people. And it got to the point where I wasn't really liking it because, well, one of the biggest things I always see is how often they will critique or judge other people's art depending how the process did it, or how if there was expression or not, especially through social media. And I see a lot of artists do this where they see someone make something super simple and easy, and they're like, "Oh, I can do that. I can do that less than 5 minutes." Or they see an artist, using a little bit of AI. They're like, "You know what? You're not an artist because you're using AI for this thing on your process." Or, "Dude, this is something that you didn't go through pain or whatever. You didn't have a hard time in your life, and you're able to make this." And I don't know. The list goes on. And it was just one of the most obnoxious things, and really blows my mind how people would think this way, because it just shows how close-minded some artists can be. And you would think that an artist would be really open to things, but they're really judging every single thing or critiquing how someone made a piece of art. And I couldn't stand it, because it's like, you're supposed to be the complete opposite. You're supposed to be curious about it. You're supposed to wonder. You're supposed to experiment. You're supposed to try as an artist or creative person. And it was the complete opposite. It's almost like they want to tell people how art's supposed to be and their standards. And I was like, that has nothing to do with with art. Art can be whatever it could be. And not even just that, it's just their attitude towards it was like so pretentious. It's just like, why do we need to like have art feel so traditional now? Like, that's been the past. Art is evolving as time goes by, whether through technology or whatever. But the part that people tend to miss out the most is the ideas and the creativity that goes through someone's mind or head about, like, you know what, I'm gonna try this. But I feel many artists feel like, no, you have to stick to painting, be traditional, learn skills and through, which I see where they would come from. But it's also the reality that, hey, art can be however you want it to be, depending on how your perspective is, or your mentality towards life is. And that's one of the most obnoxious things that I would come across. And I think one of the other things is that many artists are trying to make their creative work full time or their career, and I completely get it. But I think the part that many artists I feel miss most is the reality that comes with it. That sometimes your artwork might not work. Some people may not like it. Your work is just, that is not, maybe it's not good enough. It's just you're not marketing well, and it takes a lot of time, and that's part of it. And often I will see that many artists will complain about that. Oh, the algorithm doesn't like me. Oh, the economy ruined it for me. Being an artist is not easy. Like, it's hard or whatever. And then some people would comment on what, hey, you should try this. And they would often complain, like, no, it's not that because I did this, or, they don't do that. But it's just like, dude, like, where's the mentality changing from complaining and thinking everything so negative to being positive, being ambitious? Where's the optimism? Like, you have to be someone when it comes to being a, entrepreneur, especially with art. You can't be complaining every single minute about your problems. Like, that takes you nowhere. Instead of, you should start questioning it. And let people come to you. You need to be more open-minded about things. And often I will see that many artists would just kind of quit or give up because, of how things are running now. But in my perspective, it's like, well, if that doesn't work, then try it. Then try something new. Try something different. Really dig into this idea of where else can I, improve of what I'm trying to do. But it was just so annoying, because at that point I'm just surrounded by negativity of an environment where it seems like no one wants to try anymore, because if this doesn't work, nothing should work anymore. But that's part of being an entrepreneur, I guess. For artists who don't know, you are gonna fail more than succeed, but they don't realize that because it's their first time doing it, and they're just complaining half of the time. It just takes them nowhere. And I think another thing was that I would come across is, if one does be successful in their art, and I can't stand it. It was like this most egotistic and pretentious, performative aesthetic artists, where they just want to look really like, I don't know, Hollywood, unironically. But it's almost that they think they're too cool to, or their ego's so inflated that they think they're too cool to like help you out, or to contact you, or to think like, hey, you know what, I'm not part of you anymore. I'm my own thing now. Do it on yourself. And I see this so often, because I've seen artists who finally gradually get bigger and bigger and bigger, but their success kind of takes over their head, and they're like, you know what, you guys are nothing to anymore. Those people who just buy my stuff are just people buying it. They're no longer like, you know, my community or the people I grew up with. And I couldn't stand it, especially someone who would just observe these type of things, because it really makes me understand that what kind of community is this? It's just a competitive community? Is it to each of their own? Or is it more just about like, hey, like I'm going to be dealing with the people I'm struggling with, but once I get up there, I no longer care anymore. That's not my problem because I already solved that issue. And I think many people, at least in the art community, sometimes don't realize that sometimes, I guess what I'm trying to say is that they don't see the bigger picture. And from what I saw, you know, going to exhibitions, I see people who are actually genuine, who are transparent. But then you get this whole social media thing, or just, you know, it's just a whole completely different story. And I was like, am I being catfished here, or what's going on here? So for me, it took me quite a while to really understand that maybe I don't want to be an artist, or maybe just I don't want to be part of the community. And that was hard for me as an artist to realize, like, you know what, I love art, I love being creative, but the community doesn't speak for me as far as my identity. And it's really hard to say that because, you know, you want to be able to connect with those people, but when they're not having that same understanding of what you're seeing, it's kind of hard to do so, because as you're trying to, you know, grow as an artist and be in an environment where people are more driven, more optimistic or open-minded, you know, you kind of have to avoid at least a good amount of people who are in the art community who think that way of like, no, this is not right, or no, we can't do this. Oh, I don't want to try this because that's not what I'm not used to, or I don't want to, you know, try something different because that's not who I am. And I think nowadays, I feel like the art world is missing those type of people where they're like, hey, you know what? I've never done this before, but I wanted to sit down and try it with you. Or hey, let's work together. Even if I do this and you do this, let's try to see what we create, because that's part of, you know, connecting with people. That's part of art. That's where it happens. It's the process. But, you know, maybe I'm just being a negative Nancy or whatever you want to call it. But I'm just think from this observations that I've had throughout the years, I think that's one of the best ways I can describe the art community, at least in my perspective. But I don't know, prove me wrong, prove me right. Like I said, this is just my opinion. Who really cares what I think?